Okay. Mishnah's up on the side, in the chat. And I just want to start with a little. We're in mission number 13 in my iterations of the Mishnah. The following in an art school sitter, it could be there's different numbers, but it's the Mishnah that talks about the four characteristics of the nosnei tzedakah, of people that give charity. I want to start with just a little bit of an introduction. I actually have something on my mind which I'm probably not going to talk about because I think that it's incredibly controversial, and it's just, I think it needs a little bit more time to grow inside of me. But I'll tell you that on Sunday was a very sad day, very difficult day. There were amongst those that died on Sunday, the numbers here in Israel of those that died from corona are unfortunately very large every day. And amongst those that died, and every Jew that dies is tragic, there were many Gedolei Torah, many leaders of our generation. Rabbi David Soloveitchik, who was a 98 or 99-year-old beacon of light in the Torah world, a person who really had a single-minded focus in his life of learning and teaching Torah, and was a skion of the Soloveitchik family. So he was amongst those that were nifter. Rabbi Shiner, who was an American-born Torah scholar. He was. CIA stands for intelligence. Okay, there we go. Was an American-born Torah scholar who, until the age of 17, had actually never studied a word of Torah. And at the age, also a 98 or 99-year-old Torah sage, and at the age of 17, found out about a yeshiva. I think that he was religious his entire life, but he wasn't. But he hadn't been sent to Jewish schools. In the place that he grew up, and there were no Jewish schools. And then at the age of 17, he went to study in yeshiva in Torah Vodaas, and he became a world-renowned Torah scholar. One of the ways to describe him is, somebody told me that a friend of mine, that when he went with his children recently to get a few years ago to get a bracha, to get a bracha for the children for their bar mitzvah. So the father said to them, Rabbi, can you give a bracha? So he looked at the kids, it was twin boys, and he said that God should bless you, that you should be normal. Now nowadays that's a very huge bracha, but that really described his life. He was a very balanced and sensitive and deep Torah scholar. He actually spoke in America. He spoke at the Siyum HaShas, at the completion of the Shas, not this past one, but the one before, which is 8 years ago. And he blew the place away. 90,000 people sitting there and listening to him, and every word that came out of his mouth was gold. And he wasn't sharing deep thoughts in Torah. He was sharing he took his speech actually and he threw it away, and he was sharing just his feelings about the overwhelming sense of joy and amazement of sitting with 90,000 people completing the Talmud, and he shared that it was an incredible thing to watch. The third, but not the last, unfortunately, but the third gadol, the third giant, was Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky. We actually had the opportunity of having him in our community. We had him in our house. He was an incredible human being. Besides being a very devout chassid, and coming from an incredibly illustrious Torah family, he himself was a Torah scholar, and he was besides being a Torah scholar, he set up an institution in Pittsburgh that had an effect on the entire world. He dealt very much with 12 steps, with addiction issues, and was really the voice of reason and the voice of strength and direction and encouragement for anyone that was in that field, and for people that themselves were going through difficult times. I mean, there are people in our community that called him sort of, I'm going to say, out of the blue, and developed a relationship with him, and were able to lean on him and rely on him, both in an institutional kind of way and in a very personal kind of way. And he was a person that was an incredible person. He wrote prolifically. My boys last night were talking in a really. They remembered when he came. They also remembered that in the old shul where they sat, which was not next to me, but in the table that was right next to me. If anybody remembers the old shul, but they sat in the table next to me, and they were kids, so they weren't necessarily, davening wasn't necessarily on the top of their parade list. So, but Rabbi Twersky's books were there. What Rabbi Twersky did in a few of his books was that he was very much into, Snoopy, and Peanuts, and he used a lot of the comics to bring out points. He had a relationship with Charles Schulz, and he used. When I say it's not like to a book, there was with two of his books were complete, like almost like comic books, and with his running commentary, and it was really they were incredible books. But my boys remember that they were. This was their upbringing. They were shocked to find out that Rabbi Twersky was not the author of the Peanuts column, of the comic, because they saw it in his book. They assumed that he wrote this stuff, and when they found out there was a guy called Charles Schulz, it was like, hey, that guy stole Rabbi Twersky's stuff. So he was an incredible person. Somebody just sent me a comment that I just want to say. The world is darker without him. I just want us to remember, I'm going to come back to Rabbi Twersky in a second. I just want us to remember that every single Jew that dies in Corona, the world is darker without them. And that, we make an issue out of those that we know, and it's painful when the world loses leadership and loses people that are directions. But we always have to remember that every single person is a point of light in this world, and that when every single person dies, the same kind of kvetch in hearts, the same kind of, the tragic sense that we have when a leader dies, we have to have that sense that because of this whole thing, the world has become a much darker place, and that we have to work harder to turn the lights on, but not just because of these giants. This is they sit in a special place, but at the end of the day, it's tragic when everyone passes. Okay, just I want to come back to Rabbi Twersky, because I saw something that I've never seen in my life before, and it had an incredibly profound effect on me. They sent a link to be able to watch his levaya, to be able to participate in the funeral. So it happened to be 12:30 at night here in Beit Shemesh. It was a very small crowd, and after a little while of waiting, so then one of I think it was either his son or his son-in-law, comes to the podium and says, and I was expecting to hear Hespedim, to hear eulogies, and to hear, I knew him, I knew his work, I knew what he's accomplished. And it wasn't that I wanted to hear the Hespedim because I find out information that I didn't know about him to really get a full picture of him. But I thought that the Hespedim, the eulogies would just share something that not everybody was privy to, and be able to really give a full picture. So he stands up and he says that Zaidi said that there's no Hespedim. He doesn't want to be eulogized. The only thing that he wants is as we carry his mita, as we carry his there's no coffin in Eretz Yisrael, but as we carry his mita, we carry his body to be buried. He wants that we should sing his song, Hoshia Esamecha, Now, at every Jewish occasion, especially at Simchas Torah, you will hear that song, Hoshia es amecha, uvarech es nachlasecha. That was written by Rabbi Dr. Twersky. So that was the first thing. I had no idea. That was the first chiddush, the first thing that I learned. But the second thing was to see that at a funeral, to see everybody singing, crying, singing, as they walked him and escorted him to his final resting, and as they were digging and covering the grave, they were singing Hoshia Samecha. And why was it that he wanted that? Because he said that song has brought incredible joy to the Jewish people. He said, let that merit, let the schus of me having had the ability to write that song and to bring that kind of joy into the world and into my brothers and sisters, let that escort me to my final resting. And that I thought was so incredibly powerful. Besides the words, Hoshia Samecha, which was that was his life, he lived to help people. He lived to bring people mental health, to bring people balance in life. Hoshia Samecha, to save the Jewish people. Uvarech nachlasechen, to bring bracha into the life of the forlorn, life of people who are being snowed under by life. It was just so profound. I thought to myself, you know what? That's every single one of us. That really describes what those last moments of our connection here to earth is, the realization that all the things that we do in our lives, that's the stuff that's going to escort us. It's just, we speak about this in many places, but it's profound when you think about it, that what's going to escort you to the end, the thing that's going to escort you to the next world, is going to be all the acts of kindness, all the love, all of the purposeful living that we do. So then that's what we have to show for ourselves, and that's the thing that we have to that we have to recognize, that to put energy into those things, because at the end of the day, that's what comes with us. All the stories they tell about us, it's wonderful, it's great. All the eulogies that they give about us, it's wonderful, it's great. But the thing that really shows the value of our lives is the song that we leave in this world, is the effect that we have from the good deeds and the positive living that we do. I just thought it was an important thought to share. And even in his death, and even as he passed from this world, he made a profound effect on people and left an incredible message here in the world. Okay. I'm going to throw out something, and I really want to get to this Mishnah. I'm just going to throw out something that there wasn't a person in the world that he wouldn't help. There were no labels to him. I mean, what he did was he dealt with people with addiction. He dealt with people that were in life, that were mamish on the bottom. People that had done horrific things in their lives. Their addictions brought them to terrible places, and he helped them, and he was there for them. And he just showed us really ultimately what a reflection of God, because that's what God is. God loves every single person, and he's patient with every single person. He gives every single person chance after chance after chance after chance to rehabilitate their lives. And Rabbi Twersky was really a reflection of God, an incredible reflection of God. And I think that we have to ask ourselves, and when I say we, I'm not talking about the 23 here. I'm talking about the whole world right now. The whole world has to ask ourselves the question: if we are being reflections of God. You probably don't feel it so much in America, But I can tell you here in Eretz Yisrael, the level of sinna, the level of hatred, is off the charts. Off the charts. I'm not saying there's a right and there's a wrong. I can only tell you one thing. There is no place for hatred in our world. We are, Klal Yisrael is going through, we're going to talk about this actually later in a few minutes. Klal Yisrael is going through something that is so horrific right now. And that's why I made that point that every single person that passes because of Corona their light has been snuffed out and taken out of this world. And it's got to be a difficult experience for us. We look around the world and there is so much hatred. And the hatred is coming from that if you don't see the world my way, then you are the bad guy and I hate you. Right now, the hatred is geared towards, in the Jewish people, the hatred is geared towards one section of the population. I'm not justifying and I'm not vilifying. And the reason is because right now it's geared towards one part of the population. Tomorrow it's going to be geared towards another part of the population. Somebody sent me something. I think it might be too complicated. Let me just see if I can do it quickly. Just give me 10 seconds. Where'd it go? See if I can share it. Okay, I'm going to share a screen. There's no sound on this, so it should be fine. Okay, everyone should just take a look at this. It's sort of in the middle of it, but it's fine. In a second it's gonna start again. Now look at this part. The differences are real. The division doesn't have to be. Okay, the Shalom Challenge is a whole other thing. I'm not selling that. But to me, there are real issues out there. Why part of our population, part of our people are following the rules, part of our people are not following the rules. There is so much. There are real issues. There are real issues. Why part of our population lives differently? Why they have different values? It's big issues. But it doesn't have to bring us to the place of anger and hatred. I saw a thing today that there was a bunch of religious Jews that got caught in Morocco. They went to daven at a certain grave in Morocco, and they closed the airport in Israel, and they can't get back in. And there are Jews all over the world that have that problem, Israelis, that can't get back into the country because they closed the airport. So whenever they talk about them, say, there's a group of Israelis that are stuck in New York, a group of Israelis that are stuck in Cleveland, a group of Israelis that are stuck over here, and there's a group of Charedim that are stuck over there. What's with the descriptive word? There's the charedim, not even a religious Orthodox Jews, charedim, which has negative connotations to it. What was the necessity to do that? It's just part and parcel of the way that we look at and that we nullify, we cancel. We live in this this cancel culture that we just cancel certain people. Every one of us has to be careful of that. We can have opinions, we can have strong opinions, but we can't allow ourselves to come to a place of hatred. In a time when the world is suffering, what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to see is can you maintain your sanity, and can you maintain the truth of recognizing the value of every human being? If you have anything to learn from Rabbi Twersky, it's that every single person has a value. That they might be doing something wrong, and they might be doing something harmful, and they might be doing something that we disagree with, that's perfectly fine. But to say, I hate that person, to say, I hate those people, to allow it to come to a place that if they were on the floor and crying, we wouldn't reach out and try to help, that's something that we can't accept or allow ourselves to slide into. I'm happy to discuss it with anyone who wants to discuss it. I'm happy to discuss it further. But I just felt like it's just been burning inside of me, and I haven't been able to contain it, and I think that's the best way to say it and to put it across, just to plant that idea in our heads that have opinions, have strong opinions, but just remember that we always have opinions. There's always things that are going wrong, and we have to deal with the issues, but not with hatred. Okay, let's take a look at tonight's Mishnah. It's actually part 2. We started this Mishnah last week. We started talking about the 4 midos benos tzedakah, the 4 characteristics of people that give charity, and what we said is that it's not really, this Mishnah is not about giving charity. This Mishnah is about the 4 levels of self-awareness that a person has to have. With the whole section that we've been dealing with in the number 4s is how a person reaches a level of righteousness, how a person recognizes their character, recognizes their nature. In some cases, works against their nature. In some cases, takes their nature and develops their nature. And it brings different contexts in which we can start to recognize ourselves. One of them was anger. One of them was our basic comportment in a society. And then this one is about giving tzedakah. But it's not about giving tzedakah. It's that when we look at the way we are charitable, we can learn a lot about ourselves and a lot about our personality. So that's what it's trying to identify. And the Mishnah, to me, really, it sheds a light on a lot of things, and it illuminates it very well. The first level is a person, and again, you can see it on the side in the chat, is a person who says, Harotze sheyitain v'lo yitnu acherim. A person wants to give, but he doesn't want other people to give. That's a person who's got to be in the center of everything. And we know them. We know them. We can identify them. We know exactly who they are. You can smell them sometimes miles away. That they need to be in the center. They need to have their name known. They need to be the ones. It's also they have a certain sense of FOMO, right? That things are going to go on. They're not going to be in the middle of it. So they put themselves in the middle. Now it's a noble thing. We benefit from that, but in the end of the day, it's not good for a person when they recognize that the reason that they're doing this is because they need to be in the center. You know, one of the amazing things that once happened, once opened up the mail and I got a $10,000 check for the shul. Got a $10,000 check. $10,000 check. That's not nothing. And with it came a letter. Guy said, I'm not going to tell you anything about my visit to your community so that you won't, I absolutely do not want you to know who I am. But I came into a certain amount of money, and I've been going around America and spending Shabbos in different communities, not necessarily Orthodox, going and spending in different communities. And in those communities that I am impressed with, and he gave a certain amount of qualifications, said, I have left a check for $10,000. You're not getting a second one. So like, in those, don't think that this is the beginning of something. You're not getting a second one. But this is, I was impressed with X, Y, and Z, and this is your $10,000. I said, that to me was a blowaway, an absolute blowaway. Not just because this guy was running around dropping $10,000 in communities, but that he was so careful to make sure that nobody would ever figure out. And on a lot of rabbinic sites, I was seeing people were saying, anybody know who this guy was with who was floating $10,000 and because a lot of people got it. I think it was in the millions that he was that he had given out, and he didn't want anybody to know what it was, because he wanted you to have an advantage. He didn't need to be in the center of it. Okay, the second one is yitnu acherim v'hu yitain v'hu lo yitain, that he wants other people to give, but he doesn't want to give. It's a person that doesn't want to be burdened. It's a person that has an ease at saying, do what I say, not do what I do. It's a person, he also doesn't have a very healthy sense of himself. He's willing to push you to give things, but he doesn't see himself as being connected to something, as really being as being an important person also. Okay, we spoke about that in detail last week. Then the third one, yitnu v'yitnu acherim. He wants to give and he wants other people to give. We said that's a chassid, that's a pious person, because that's a person that recognizes that, it's all about giving, and that it's not about you giving, and it's not about me giving. It's about Jews giving to Jews. It's about worrying about other people. There is a cemetery in Worms, and in the cemetery in Worms, there is a great tzaddik who is buried there named the Maharil. The Maharil was a personality that was very much at the center of the Jewish law that we keep today. The Maharil was very much a halachist and a very respected opinion. Next to the Maharil is the town's butcher. Now, very often when you find the graves of great sages, there's a reason why the person next to him is buried. When you come with me to Krakow, so then we'll go to the cemetery in Krakow, and in the cemetery in Krakow there are great sages buried there, and next to one of the great sages is what's called the Holy Beggar. We'll learn about him, but there's always a reason why somebody is buried next to somebody else, especially when you're dealing with a great sage. So why was this guy buried next to the Maharil? Because this butcher every single Friday would wake up in the morning, and the family did the following thing. They would weigh the parents and the children, and they would take the monetary value of the weight of the family, and they would take meat that corresponded to that number, and they would give the meat out to the poor people in the town. And that's what the guy did every single Friday. He was a person who recognized that if I'm here and I have, then my job is to share it with other people. That's my tafkid, that's my purpose, that's why I was given it. The Medrash tells over an astounding story. The Medrash says that there was a righteous fellow, living a fine life. All of a sudden his life turned and lost all his money. Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, came to him, guised as an Arab, and said to him that in heaven, he said, I see for you. He didn't tell him as Elijah the prophet. He says, as some Arab merchant, he says that there are 7 good years in store for you. Do you want them now, or do you want them at the end of your life? So he ignored it. He said, "I'm a shugner." Came to him a second time, and he said to him, "There's 7 good years in store for you. Do you want them now, or do you want them at the end of your life?" Nothing. He said, he walked away from the guy. A third time he came to him. So he said, "I have to go ask my wife." So he went to his wife. He told her the whole story. So she said, "Take them now." So he went back to Elijah the prophet, thinking that this was, some Arab merchant, and said to him, "We'll take them now." The merchant said, "You don't have to worry. They're on their way." As he came home, his kids came running out. They were playing in the yard, and they uncovered a pouch that had an incredible amount of gold in it, and it was enough to take care of him for a very long time. His wife says, we have this money now, we can take care of ourselves. Now we have to dedicate ourselves in the next 7 years. We have to dedicate ourselves to chesed, to kindness, to giving to others. And for 7 years, they became the most benevolent, the most giving, the biggest baalei tzedakah in the area. They supported an incredible amount of people, and their whole life was worried about other people. After 7 years, Eliyahu Hanavi came to them and said, the 7 years are up. God wants his money back. So the fellow says, go to God and say to God that he can have his money back. We're happy to give it to him. But what we want is that we want God to look at it and say, did we handle his money correctly? Did we do the right thing with his money? And if he did, then let him deal with it correctly. And Eliyahu Hanavi came back to them and said, the rest of your life is going to be this way. Because God saw in the person, in this fellow and his wife, that they recognized that what was their tafkid, what was their purpose in life, was not to worry about themselves, but to worry and to focus about other people. Beautiful. But let's take a look at number 4. The fourth type, the fourth characteristic is lo yitain v'lo yitnu acherim, that they don't want to give, and they don't want others to give either. What kind of person is that? So there's an incredible Rambam. I want to read you the Rambam, and I'll do it as quickly as possible, but the Rambam says as follows. The Rambam says there's a positive commandment in the Torah, lizok ulahariya, to call out and to blow shofar and to cry out with chatzotzos, with trumpets and horns, al kol tzara shetavo al hatzibur. Every time the Jewish nation finds itself in trouble, we have an obligation to call out to God, to fast and to cry, shenemar, as it says, and he quotes a verse, that it says in the Torah that when we are in trouble, we have to call out to God. In other words, anything that will happen to us, like famine or sickness or disease or enemies, we have to cry out to God. And the Rambam says this is part of tshuva. This is part of the repentance that we need to do when we find ourselves in these difficult situations. Because we have to, this will help remove the black mark, so to speak, against us in heaven. Avalim lo yizaku, but if we don't cry out, v'lo yoriu, and we don't call to God, elo yomru davar zeh miminhag ha'olam, we say, look, things happen, stuff happens. And this is why this is happening to us. V'tzarazu nikra nikris. It happens. It just happens. Things happen. Diseases happen in the world. People die in the world. Tragedies happen. There's troubles. There are enemies. These are just part of the way the world works. Listen to the words of the Rambam. Harei zu derech Achzarius. This is hard-hearted. This is derech Achzarius. This is the way of people that are filled with that are hard-hearted and that are that are stubborn and that are cruel. V'goremes lahem lidabek b'maaseyim haroyim, and that cruelty that they have causes them to hold on to their actions and not to give up. V'tosef hatzara tzaras acheres. And the terrible things that are happening to us will cause more terrible things to happen. What the Rambam is saying is that if we have a chance to be able to help and we don't help, that's called Achzarius. It could be, if a person doesn't cry out and call out, I would have called it a bunch of other things. A person's selfish, a person's self-absorbed. But why does the Rambam use the word Achzarius? That's cruelty. That's hard-hearted and cruel. You know, if you lived in a place that there was a street where there was no stop sign, there was no light, and there was accidents that were happening there all the time. And you went to the government officials and you asked them to please put something there. And they had the opportunity to be able to put a stop sign, simple stop sign. And they said, no, it's fine. And they could stop all the deaths that were happening on a weekly basis. Somebody died at that intersection. And if they don't take the opportunity, they don't take the chance that they could have stopped something, that's called cruelty. The Rambam is telling us that when we have the opportunity to be able to help someone, we have the opportunity to be able to take away somebody's pain, and we don't, that's not just selfishness, it's not just being self-absorbed, but it's actually considered Achzarius, it's actually considered cruelty. It's hard-heartedness. And what the Mishnah is telling us is that this level, which we call a rasha, a wicked person, it's not just that the person is selfish and it's not just that the person is self-absorbed, but when that happens to us, the end of that is that we become cruel. That we could watch in front of us somebody with such great need and we can turn our backs on them. And that the Mishnah wants us to understand that this attitude of stinginess, of I don't want to give, I don't want others to give, that is the roots of cruelty. Because it starts off just by saying, no, you know what, it's not a worthy cause and I don't really want to be involved in that. But when we close our hand, we also learn how to close our hearts. And that's the beginning of cruelty. It's something, as in the rest of this Mishnah, that we have to be able to look into ourselves and recognize that we have some of that. We have some of that ability to be able to get to that place. And that we have to ensure that we never reach that place. One of the ways of ensuring that we never reach that place is that we're always putting ourselves in places that we have an opportunity to help others. Because the more we keep that hand flowing, the more we keep the heart open, so then that protects us against falling into the dangerous place of closing the hand and then ultimately closing the heart. Okay, that's this Mishnah. I saw somebody okay, I can't see who it was that sent me stuff on the side, in the chat, and I'm happy to discuss it. You can text me or send me a WhatsApp privately, and I'm happy to, or call me, and I'm happy to discuss it. It's I've got 2 minutes left, and I can't bring it up now. Perhaps maybe next Monday we can discuss it. But people ask questions, of course, about the charedim, about funerals, about people that seemingly are not caring about COVID and the rules. But again, I can't deal with it now. It's just too close to the edge now. I got to go, but I'm happy to discuss it. And if you want to talk about it privately, again, just send me an email or a text message, and I'm happy to talk about it. Okay, everybody should have a beautiful week. We should have a week of light and of happiness and of joy, and just continue smiling and pushing forward and finding meaning and purpose in everything we do. Okay, have a good one, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, pleasure.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.